Hey, 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 it's Rebecca, and you're listening to Resilient by Design. Today's episode is another goodie. I've got Erica Gelman of Erica Gelman Design Inc. here in Toronto. She's been on the podcast before. She is a phenomenal designer, highly talented, working on massive projects. And today she's talking about contracts. We're discussing why you need a contract, what needs to be in that contract. And Erica, I did not expect this. She shares a story of being sued by a client. You are not going to want to miss this episode because this is every designer's fear. And she walks you through exactly what happened so that you don't have to be in that situation yourself. It's so good. I love Erica's honesty. She's so open to sharing everything. Erica is an esteemed designer. She graduated from the International Academy of Design and Technology. She leads a talented team of, I think, 5 or 6 designers. She prides herself on having a keen eye for detail. She combines her formal training with her flair for style, impeccable sense of color to create truly unique spaces. Her work has been seen in numerous national lifestyle publications. She does simple yet sophisticated designs with a modern touch, I would add. And she uses a lot of textures, bold patterns, really timeless, but very powerful designs. If you follow her on Instagram, you know what I'm talking about. She's a pretty big deal. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Erica Gelman. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. All right, Erica Gelman is back on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for joining me today, Erica.
Thank you for having me again.
I'm really excited because you have such an incredible business. I'm so inspired by what you're doing. Your work is truly next level. And so I think this is going to be a really great conversation because I know a lot of designers look up to you and what you're doing with your business and your team. But before we dive into all things, let you introduce yourself to our listeners if they don't know who you are.
Okay. My name is Erica Gelman. I am an interior designer. I am located in Toronto, but globally available. We are a high-end, we specialize in high-end residential design. Our specialty is really starting from the ground up and completely moving our clients in white glove. I say this to everyone, you can, after we're done, you can just take a suitcase and your house is fully done, stamped by EGD. So we definitely dabble in the high-end interior design market. And when I say we're a team of all females. We're 5 of us right now, hopefully growing. But yeah, that's who we are and what we do.
Awesome. And today you and I were chatting over the gram, I think it was, and we were talking about contracts. We haven't talked enough about the role an agreement or a contract plays in your business. I certainly haven't had a lot of conversations here on the podcast about it. And you came to me and you were like, I feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had. Designers need to be talking more about this. And I was like, yes, lady, let's do it. I know that I started my business, I didn't have a contract. I had a 1-page agreement that I just wrote I agree to hire Rebecca Hay Designs, and we signed. And then it slowly grew from there. It's a constant work in progress.
Yes.
Would you say that that's normal? Are you always updating and tweaking your contract? I mean, not with every project, but do you find that you're adding things as situations occur?
Yes. So Oh, I have so much to talk about. I almost feel like there's going to be a part 2 to this. And I'm so happy to be talking about it because I don't think I was ever exposed to having this conversation before, especially when I started. So if there are new designers, and I know that a lot of up and coming designers are listening to the podcast. So I am so happy to be able to talk about this and share. And if I can help, or if we can have a conversation and help one person, I'll be so happy with that end result. What I will say is, if you are starting out brand new, and by the way, I do not have a legal degree and I have never taken a law course, so this is just cold-hearted experience. So I think, and exactly, Rebecca, what you said, when you started out, you had a 1-page agreement. And if I can go back from day one of, opening my doors, I would say the first thing that I would invest in is a lawyer. And I would get a lawyer to draft up a proper project agreement, contract, proposal, whatever you guys call it. Essentially, it is a contract, and it is a contract that both parties need to abide by. It's an obligation on both sides. So again, my biggest advice to anybody listening, and if you've started your business yesterday, or you've been in business for 5 years or 10 years or 15 years, and you've never hired a lawyer to put together a contract for you, before you spend any money on your business elsewhere, get that lawyer. That's, I would say, my biggest.
I agree.
Biggest advice.
I just want to also add to that, because there's a lot of resources online where you can purchase and download a contract. And even there are organizations and industry associations like Aredo. I know that if you're an Aredo member, because I just had this conversation with Maya and Sharon about Aredo, that you can download contracts there. And that's all well and good. But regardless of who gave you the contract and what you paid for it, you still should have a lawyer review it, because they might see something that's not there. And also, your business is unique to you. Like, no two businesses are exactly the same. And so you want to make sure that your contract is protecting you for the method and the way that you do things.
Yes.
Right?
So important.
Yes.
If we can go back. So 2008, I started my business. So I am in my 15th year. Funny enough, it's March. I can't remember the exact date. I know it's coming up soon. So it's going to be my 15-year anniversary. I should probably double check. I know. I should probably double check what day that was, but it is this month. So I can confidently say I've been in business for 15 years. My business has changed exponentially since the day I opened, which is normal. And I will say, even though when I first started, and I'm sure I've said this before on your podcast, I'll tell anyone who wants to listen, I did not start doing anything near what I'm doing today. I started doing paint consultations. I started doing kitchen consultations, where clients would sometimes take me to like a kitchen supplier, and they'd be like, which door do you like? Which profile do you like? What hardware looks good with this? I would go to furniture stores and I call them clients, but a lot of people weren't actually paying me. So it's a whole other story, but
that's a hobby, girl. That's a hobby.
That's I know.
A hobby.
I just didn't know, but it's okay. It's fine. I did it and I got it over with, and I've learned. So it is what it is. But again, I'll still refer to them as clients, but I would go to furniture stores and pick out fabric for a sofa. So in my wildest dreams, I didn't even think that I needed a contract. I could not have been more wrong. And I would say it does not matter what the actual scope of work is. If there is an obligation on your end to perform a service, or if you're selling product, and then the expectation is that you are being paid, there has to be an agreement. And yes, I 100% my agreements were probably started off as 1 page. Now we're at about I think 14, 13, between 13 and 15. And it depends really like what the actual scope is. But oh gosh, there's so much I want to say about this. I went into projects or even just a job. I went into this and my agreements were 100% based on me trying to look reasonable to the client. So, I'd have the client's information, my information, and I was like, I want them to think I'm reasonable. So I'm not going to charge them until the project is over. And I'm going to do everything was, how do I look like this like really great designer that is not just gouging them for money, which if you step back, everyone who does this performs a service. The expectation is that they need to be paid for it, and as they should be. And nobody's doing anybody a favor in that situation. So I believe that regardless of what the scope is, what the job is, if you are performing a service or you're selling a product and you are being paid for it, there has to be a contract that you can confidently know is protecting you and your business. And it does not matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you're starting out. If you're just doing paint consultations, you need to have something in place that's going to protect you.
I'm going to just ask you to pause there because I wrote down what you said. I think that's really powerful. I just think it's worth repeating that your contract is there to protect you and your business. It is not intended to protect your client. Right? The contract is to protect you and your business from the client.
Yes.
You said that. It's not about looking reasonable, like, we're going to share our discounts, or here's what we're going to do for you. And you don't have to pay us until this,
Yep.
No, it's not about being amenable. They're going to hire you because they want to hire you. You're professional. They're going to pay you what you are worth or what your service is worth. And then you need a contract to protect you.
Yes.
And it's okay to protect yourself because shit can go wrong and sideways.
So I will share a story. I have been sued.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Not like I'm glad you were sued, but I'm so glad that you want to talk about this. Okay.
Yes.
Tell us everything.
Okay. And you know what? I am, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a complete open book. And I tell anyone, like, if you ever reach out to me on any one of my platforms on social media, it's me who does all the replying. So if you ever have any questions, chances are, unless it's stuck somewhere in a deep dive in my DM, but I'm so happy to share this because, like I said, I've been through everything. And when I tell you why I was sued for, everyone's jaws will fall on the floor, but it can happen. So, story time. I had a client that I was working with. Client was it was a great experience working with this particular client. We had decorated at that point. I was actually pregnant with my daughter. I was at their house on a Friday and I delivered on a Saturday. Or on a Sunday. So it was,
Girl, you were working too hard. That tells me that. That's insane. Don't advise anyone to do that. Take some time.
No, I've never taken a mat leave. That's just not who I am. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I 100% believe that everyone should, but I just don't know how to rest. So it was exactly 9 years ago that I was working with this client. So we had decorated a couple spaces in their house. Everything went really well. I actually had my contract with them, funny enough, or my procedure and the contract with them was great. I had them sign off on everything. Things came, they were happy. So now you're probably thinking, okay, well, how'd you get sued, right? So in walks in the mother of the client. So
I'm just doing like a big, oh my God, because I've had a mother of a client situation, did not end in being sued, but I'm like, oh my God, yes, tell us more because other people can get involved sometimes.
Oh yeah. Oh, wow. Funny enough. Okay. So here we go. If you haven't been listening up until this point, this is the time to crank up that volume. So in walks in the mother who says to the client, oh my God, it was all good actually. I love your family room sofa. Love it. Do you think your designer could make me a sofa just like it? And it was a custom made sofa at that time. And so she said, well, let me reach out and speak to her. So she sends me an email and she's like, can I connect you with my mom? She actually loves the sofa that you did in our family room. She's moving into a condo and wants something exactly like it, but probably just in a different fabric. So the Erica of 9 years ago was like, absolutely, of course, I'll make your mom a sofa. No problem at all. So I said, let's, why doesn't she give me a call? So she calls me, the mother, and says, my father was in the furniture business for 40 years. So I know, I love this piece. I want something exactly like it. I just want to change the color. Can you bring me a couple samples? So I said to her, what I would love to do is go into your space because it's a custom made piece. And I would like to measure out your space to figure out the exact sizing that we need. Because she did mention that her sofa needs to be a little smaller. So I said to her, I do need to take my measurements. No. I know exactly the size that I need. I've already measured. I need a sofa that is, I don't even remember the sizing, that is X long by X deep, this wide. I know exactly the size that I want. I just need you to help me with some fabrics. So I said, you know what? I actually have a meeting with your daughter next week. Let me bring you some fabrics. If you can meet me at their house, that would be fine. But I would really still like the opportunity to come to your house. It's going to cost you an hour of my time. At that point, it was like, I don't know, $100 an hour, 150, let's say. And she said, no. I really don't want to spend the extra money. I just want to just move forward.
Red flag.
I just want you to, it sounded so simple. And of course, there was absolutely no agreement in place because I'm thinking, okay, well, I've already done it. She's seen it. Everything's great. She knows furniture. So she's providing me the sizes. I did have her sign off 100 times over on the size that she wanted and the fabric that she wanted. Fast forward, the piece gets delivered. I've never been to her apartment. I do need to preface by saying this. I'd never walked into her space. She sends us an email saying, this is disgusting. This piece is too small. That's not what I wanted. That's not what you promised me. I'm like, oh my God, what size is it? It's the exact size that she had requested, that we had her sign off on, that she had asked for, that she had, been around her father in the last 40 years in business. And she was almost an expert at this point. Forget about me. She doesn't need me. She didn't need to pay me the $150. She's an expert.
Oh my God, Erica.
Anyways, she's like, I need you to take this sofa back. I need you to make me a new one in a better, I want you to come to my condo, which I did. At that point I ran. I was like, oh my God.
Now she wants you to come.
Right. I need you to come to my condo immediately and take a look at this. And I'm panicking because I'm thinking that the supplier had just made the piece too small. So I get there, first time ever walking into this apartment. I take the measurements and it's exactly the right size, but it was a sectional. She missed completely the corner. So the sizing that she had given me was she wanted it from plus the corners, which she didn't articulate because she had absolutely no experience. Yeah. Didn't want to pay me to come to her home. So she basically threatened me and she was like, well, if you don't take this away, I'm going to sue you.
Oh my God.
And I'm thinking, there's no way this lady's going to sue me. I didn't do anything wrong. Guess what? She sued me.
Were you shitting your pants? I would be like, was this the first time you've ever had to deal with legal action?
Oh yeah, I was shaking. So yeah, I did.
Like bawling my eyes out.
I came to court, and I'm like, but I didn't do anything wrong. And also I was incorporated then, but then she also tried to sue me personally, which I have to tell you, like you cannot. So the judge. Well, first you go into like a mediation and it's a settlement conference, right? So they try to settle things outside. And I did have a lawyer. I did bring a lawyer with me to the settlement conference. Anyways, she didn't want to settle. She wanted to go to court and I wasn't going to pay her because she wanted her money back. It was a custom piece. It's not like I'm a furniture store and I can put it back on my showroom floor. It was made to order based on her sizing. So anyways, long story short, it ended up in court. It was a very, very, very long battle. I went and I self-represent myself at the very beginning, thinking I was going to save a little bit of money. Things do not really, in my opinion, do not always go as planned when that happens. And I ended up hiring a lawyer because we were in court for years. And also COVID hit and then we got extended, ended up coming up on Zoom. Anyways,
God, Erica.
It did cost me a lot of money to get a lawyer. I did
Probably
have to,
more than the couch was worth.
probably. And then at the end, I actually did have to pay her, not the full amount.
No.
We settled on a very small amount, but I did have to pay out.
Wow.
Because she ordered something for me and it was my responsibility, even though she didn't want to pay me. I shouldn't have done it to begin with, but this is a perfect example for anybody. It can happen. Nobody has this little fence around them that protects them from anything. You need to protect yourself regardless, and I will say this again, regardless of how big or how small your project is.
So I'm going to stop you right there because I think I'm so grateful to you for sharing this example and this story. Thank you for being so open. Like, honestly, like I feel emotional just being so grateful for you right now, Erica. You have no idea how many times designers inside this community, in our Facebook group, in our designers room, in my courses, DMs, how often designers are so nervous to spec custom product for this reason. People are so scared because they're like, well, what happens if it doesn't fit? What happens if the client doesn't like it? It's not like you just pick up the phone and call Crate and Barrel and they take the sofa back. Like, it is a legit concern. So I'm glad you're sharing the story, not to scare people, because I still think everyone can do custom. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. So I can't wait to see how this story transfers to how do you protect yourself against this situation?
So that's where your contract, the one that's protecting you and your business, comes into play. So I actually sat down with, and this is very recent. So what I will say is I never really saw the value. And even after I was sued, it did happen fairly soon after that, because what I will say is, this incident happened in 2015, maybe 2016, because it was after I'd finished working with these clients. So maybe 2015, and it just ended last year. So,
oh my God. Okay, hold on. That's like 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's like 8 years.
Well, we were paused
for 7 years.
We were paused for 2 years over COVID. And you have to remember, when you're in court, if you, let's say at the end of the day, if you have a next court date, especially because this is not like any kind of emergency situation, your next court date could be 6 months, 8 months. It could be a year later. So you could be in court just once a year, but that's why it lasts for so long. But again, we did have a huge pause because of COVID.
Think about the mental strain of always having that weighing over you. And even if you had won, let's just talk about that for a second. Even if you had won, you still probably would never have wished to be in that situation, because the mental strain, the stress of it all, how it probably affects you thinking about all of your business practice and your client relations. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk about the contract stuff.
Yes.
How can designers, this is a very real example about a very real fear too that designers have that I mentioned. So what can we do then to protect ourselves? Can a contract protect us, or is it all just thrown out in a court of law?
That's a very interesting question. I don't know the particulars, again, because I'm not a lawyer. But what I will say is I have heard that, you can have something in your contract, but then once you get to court, it is up to the judge to rule But if you have a downloadable contract, perhaps that's where there's a little bit more gray area versus why I really think that if you make an investment to hire a lawyer to create a contract that is specifically designed for you and your business, it's less likely because you're talking about very specific things that perhaps that you do within your business versus a contract that you can, like you were talking about, you can purchase a templated contract or a downloadable contract that probably is a lot more general. And what I will say is when you do have things that are a lot more general, there's a lot of gray area. And then that's when you have to fight. So you're going to hire that lawyer anyways. Might as well do it.
Yeah, right. Do it earlier.
Might as well do it when you're not in a state of panic. Because when you hire that lawyer, you're in a state of panic. You don't know. No one is going away for any of this stuff. So, but do you still lose sleep over it? Absolutely. And it does, those things definitely weigh heavy on me. It's also a reflection of your reputation. I had a great relationship with her daughter, excellent relationship. And that could have, I don't know the clients that stopped because of the incident that happened because of her mother, right? She could have referred me to the world and back. So, you definitely, there is, especially if you're someone, like myself, who takes your business very seriously. And I'm sure anyone who is listening to this, and they're taking your courses, they know the importance of your business and your reputation. So you just don't want to get there. Like you just don't want to be in those situations. So for me, when I sat down with my lawyer and we discussed just literally everything that I do, and some things that I don't necessarily do often, but we still wanted them in there. The smallest things, not even, the custom furniture is, obviously one part, but then there's like the construction side of things, but then there's the like everyday small incidentals that happen. So we put into our contract that clients will be billed for courier fees that they're going to receive monthly. And it's just, we literally went through just everyday practices of my business and put that all into our contract. So I never get a phone call from someone that says, "Hey, I was just billed courier fees. I wasn't expecting that." But they're in your contract. And what I will say is, read your contract if you have the opportunity with your client out loud.
Yes, 100%. We do that 100%. In a Zoom, in person. It's so important because they're not going to read it.
No,
I'm sorry, they just don't. They skim it.
And if they probably look at, your fee proposal and like, that's pretty much it.
Exactly.
But the way that our contract is divided is the way that we work. So we have like our phase 1, which is essentially like our schedule A. Then we have our phase 2, which is our schedule B. Then we have our phase 3, and which is schedule C. And it's also then reflected in everything. So it's reflected in our fees. So our fee structure, our payment schedule is also then reflected in schedule A, schedule B, schedule C. It also makes you look like you're a professional business. And you want to look like that because you want your clients to respect you and they want to know that you respect your business. And you've gone that extra step by making sure that if they know that you're taking all the precautions and measures to put something very professional in place, they're going to look at you as if you're a professional and not just a hobbyist, not just someone that's coming to their home to, to do whatever the service may be. But no, this is a business, again, regardless of the scope and regardless of how much you're getting paid for that. But if you're stepping into that project on a professional level, you will be treated as such.
Yes, I agree 100%. The contract, I've always sort of said, is like, it's a little bit like your backbone. Like it gives me, I'm able to say, well, in our contract, it's this. I know so many of us have a hard time standing up for our worth and standing up for ourselves and saying, I do this thing and I need this money. And you don't have to say that because it's in your contract. So you can just defer to your contract and say, this is our schedule. And by having it on paper, branded, it makes you look, and appear totally more professional. And I think it's such an important, and I also love that you break it down by phases. That's what we do as well. Our payment schedules are based on the phase that we're at. And so that it's really easy for the client to digest that way, I think too. Yeah. I know it's to protect us, but it protects us only as well as our clients can understand it. So if it's just a bunch of legalese in like 7 pages that doesn't make sense to the average person, I have heard from some lawyers that actually can do you a disservice in court, because if your contract is so complicated that the average person doesn't understand it, that the judge could rule and say, how is a layman expected to understand these terms in this description? And so they will rule in the favor of the client. So I think it's important that it is something that is very easily communicated, and walking clients through, talking them through it. We do that always in a consultation, or sometimes we do it on Zoom. I think it's really powerful. And I love that you said that.
There's also something that I feel really strongly about within contracts. If you expect your clients to follow your contract, you need to follow your own contract. So if you have in there a section that we have that's called additional fees and services, which also, if you want something to, Rebecca, the exact same thing that you were saying, when a judge rules and says, well, how is a layman supposed to understand this? Things that are repeated in our contract, so the extra fees and services, are bold. And it's something that your eye will take you to immediately. And it's not something that I'm hiding. It's not something that's, within, I know that like the big phone carriers, when you sign the contract, you never actually read it. And there's like a million pages and font is like 0.5 and you can't read anything anyways. Yeah. No. So I specifically make sure that things that I want my clients to not miss, I bold it. And it's something that I want them to read. I want them to know what they're getting into. But at the same time, I need to make sure that I'm following those extra fees and services. So for instance, if you've only allotted, let's say 20 hours, so we work on flat fees. And this could definitely be different if you are working on a per hour basis. Our hourly rates are still in the contract because we do have extra services that could, in case the project does, in case the scope changes, or, we do have additional fees and services that can be applied, but we work on a flat fee basis. So if, let's say, I've allotted, and I'm just going to throw out a number, 20 hours for project coordination, design coordination, which is essentially the implementation phase of our project, I need to make sure that once those clients have hit 20 hours, that I notify them that they are now going to go on a billing cycle, on a per hour billing cycle. If you, let's say, are like, oh, it's fine, we're just, I've given them 20 hours, we're at 25, I'm not going to send them a bill. Do you know what's going to happen? You have now told your clients, it's okay. Don't worry about what the contract says. I got you. It's on me. Don't worry about it. And then you've said it. You haven't spoken the words, but you've told them. So don't be surprised when those 20 hours take you to 40 hours. And then when you say, oh my God, well, okay, now I've doubled the contract, or now I've doubled my allotted hours, and then you try to send them a bill, do not be surprised when that bill does not get paid, because you've told your clients, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, hearing you say that is a good reminder for me, because we're in a situation now with a client who's not, it's an hourly project and they're not paying us as per our payment terms, which is our payment schedule timeline in our contract. And I keep saying to my team, I'm like, we need to ensure that we always send that invoice by the 5th of the month, because that's what it says in our contract. And if we don't stick to it, it's going to be very hard for us to then try and enforce another section of the contract. But we have let it slide a little bit because it's taking them so long to get those hourly invoices, because they're a big corporation. And it's got me reflecting on, you're right. If we aren't from the beginning, it has to be from the beginning though. If we aren't using our contract, then our clients are going to abuse it. Not everybody. but it can happen.
Well, you want them to, if you want them to take your contract seriously, you need to take your contract seriously. So another thing is, let's say you decide to let things slide. I guarantee you, if the client has anything that they feel that has not been perhaps done to the way that your contract said it would, they'll know immediately and they'll always throw it back. And they'll say, well, your contract says that you're going to do X, Y, Z, and you haven't done that. And then in your head, you're like, yeah, but I've done so much else for you.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that not just you have read the contract and understand the contract, but I strongly feel that as a team. So if you do work not just on your own, but even if you have a part-timer, even if you have a contract worker, if you have anybody that's going to be either front-facing with the client, so at any point, if they're going to have any type of communication, or if they're working on a project, they need to know what your company standards are. And I strongly believe that that means that they need to know what's in your contract, because that will, like you said, you keep on telling your team, we need to send this out by the 5th. If they had a copy of a contract, doesn't have to be a particular one, but just your standards, your standard company contract, they will know. You don't need to remind them because it's in the contract. It says that the clients receive, let's say, invoices by the 5th. Your staff will know, okay, well, we need to send this out by the 5th because it's in the contract. And I've had a meeting with my team, because it's not, my staff does have conversations with our clients, and they are project managers and they lead projects. So they need to know what their obligations are as well. And they need to know, because here's the thing, while they work for you, everyone who speaks to any one of our clients is Erica Gelman at that moment. Because even if they leave and they no longer work for you and they've done something that goes against your contract, and God forbid you get sued, it doesn't matter that it was Jane Doe. It's Erica Gelman that's going to get sued, or Erica Gelman Inc. that's going to get sued.
Yeah, it's so true. I know. And that's part of what people get nervous hiring. And I don't want that to deter someone from hiring and growing their team. But it is recognizing, as the business owner, that you are the sole person responsible for the actions of your team. And, you take that hit in many different ways often. But I love that idea of, I don't know if I've done that before with my team, is walk them through the contract. And I can almost see that as part of an onboarding process. Like when you bring somebody on, like especially if they're directly involved in the design business, maybe not if someone's helping you on your social media, but if you're bringing on members that are helping with your design process and delivering your designs, then getting them to walk through so that they understand there's a reason we document our hours this way. There's a reason we make sure that the admin gets the invoice out by this date, or whatever it is, so that they see, oh, this is what the client sees. So this is like a legit real thing. It's not just Erica telling me, like, don't forget to track that particular type of hour. It's billable or what have you. Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah. I think that there's only benefit to going over particulars with your team, like you said, especially if they are working directly on the project. If they're working directly with trades, if they're speaking to contractors, like we have in our project coordination, so our implementation phase, we have that the lead on the project. So whoever is the internal project manager of the project, they coordinate with whoever is on site. So the PM that's on site, they have, once we're into finishing, they have weekly just catch up meetings with them. And it could be a 5-minute phone call. It could be a 10-minute Zoom meeting, whatever it is, but that's also in my contract. So the clients are expecting this to happen, but you can say to them, oh, make sure that you have that weekly catch up. But if they actually see it in the contract, they know, okay, this is part of my agreement with the company, because this is the agreement that the company has with the client.
So you have that in your contract, that the weekly, we call them progress updates. So that's you're including a lot of detail, more detail, I think, than I do in my contract. We verbally share that we're going to be connecting with you every Thursday. You're going to receive communication, but it's not in our contract.
No. Anything that you say verbally is great, and that's definitely a way to communicate when you are potentially meeting the client for the first time. You have a meet and greet, you're selling your services to them, or you're simply just explaining how your services work. But having everything in the contract, just I feel on the client's end as well, it makes them feel safe that everything that you've actually told them is going to happen, and it wasn't just a pitch. You know, you can say to them, absolutely,
totally builds trust. Yeah,
absolutely. And then it shows them, because our process, and it's, I don't have every single detail in there, but I do have like a little, we're working on it. I actually don't have a welcome package yet. We're actually working on one. My welcome package will include a little bit more like of that, just detail, like we need your approval on this before this can happen and all that kind of stuff. You don't need that necessarily in your project, but it is good for the clients to know. But it's a great synopsis of how your clients are going to get from day one, the meet and greet phase, into your move-in phase. And all that bulk is written out for them. And after I've given them their entire step process, then I actually go into just terms and conditions.
In the contract or the welcome pack?
No, like in my contract. So I start off, I call
terms and conditions, like an appendix or something?
Yes. So I have the way that my contract works is, again, it has my entire step process. And that I think is probably about, let's say, 7 pages maybe. And then we go right into the terms and conditions. And then at the very end, it says, if these terms and conditions are, I don't know the exact wording, but if they're approved by the client, then please sign below. So it's not like a per line signature. It's just like it is on your last page.
Yeah. Okay. That's what we do. And it's not, just to clarify, because you said you call it a proposal, is your contract and your proposal one and the same?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you
I want them to
talk about why you do that? Because I do that too. And I think a lot of people get confused by that.
Sure. I want the clients to know what they're getting into. The proposal, let's be honest, as much as we put all of our process information, the clients want to know how much it's going to cost. That's why they're reaching out, and that's why they're asking for a proposal, which is wonderful. But we know that the fees don't stop there. So there are, for us, there's like the moving expenses, there's the courier fees, there's they have options to purchase additional renderings if they want. They don't have to, but they can. I also have, stuff like I said, if things go beyond the scope of work, we do have hourly billing in there. So the one number is wonderful for them to know, okay, this is how much it's going to cost me. But then I want them to know exactly what they're getting into. So I want them to know, we have about like a 5% buffer in there for moving expenses. So your load-in. So we say you should expect somewhere between like 5 to 8% of your total furniture to be reflective of your moving costs. And even they haven't even purchased anything yet, but I want them to know, this is the expectation. This is what it's probably going to cost you. It's the same thing as purchasing a home. So the for sale number or the purchase price it doesn't end there. There's closing costs. There's your moving expenses. Like there's so many costs associated with purchasing that house. A good realtor will kind of give you all those numbers up front, not to scare you, but so there's nothing unexpected, and you're fully prepared, because there's nothing worse than having a client that was not expecting anything other than your fees. And then you get into this really ugly situation of now having to explain yourself, having to, them having to call. Those conversations are always uncomfortable. Have them understand that if you want to retain our services, this is how we work. We'd love to have you, but this is what you should be expecting as well.
Yeah, I love that. Question specifically about the moving furniture and all of that. Do you collect any money up front for these miscellaneous incidentals, or do you simply bill them on a monthly basis?
So courier fees are typically billed monthly. There is also no markup on that. So our courier will send us our monthly bill, and we'll just divide everything per project. And whatever that cost is, we bill it right to the client. There is no markup. And our courier can't, they can only bill per one account. So it's not that they can take additional forms of payment. So that's why everything just comes through us and we pay them. And there's not even an administrative fee on there. It's just, if the package costs $40 or if the letter costs $20, that's how much the clients are being billed. It is in there and it's a monthly expense. What happens prior to load-in is at that point, we know everything that's going to be loaded into the home. And we know where everything is being stored. We know that if it's still at a supplier, we know if it's in our personal storage, we know if it is, perhaps it's even at the, we deal a lot with Mittman. So they have a storage facility. So we know where everything is. We create a list for them and they actually give us an approximate hourly. This is how much it's going to approximately cost for all the pickups. And then the delivery, it's white gloves. So they remove all the garbage. That's why I say our clients could essentially walk in with a suitcase because they're left with just the pieces completely assembled in spot with no boxes, no debris, no nothing. So our logistic companies will send us an approximate an estimate of how much that service is going to cost. We then send that over to the client. And in order to book the moving company, they require a 50% deposit. So there is no markup on our end. We just coordinate everything because that way we know that everything is going to line up for us and there aren't going to be any mishaps if we allow the client to do so. I have no control over that, but we send that to the client. And then again, it all comes down to their 30-day booking. They will put a 50% deposit because they know approximately what it's going to cost them. And then their last payment, once everything is actually calculated, they're usually pretty good. It could be, an hour here, an hour there, but it's nothing that is super surprising.
So you're not collecting money up front for Mittman or for that load-in. You bill the client, they pay you, and then you pay Mittman. Okay, yes. So that's interesting. It's just a different way of doing it. We collect an incidentals retainer to cover monthly storage fees. So if Mittman, a lot of our items will arrive, Mittman will inspect it. And for those who don't know Mittman, there are other companies like that, but essentially they are a moving company logistics. And so they will inspect and store furniture for us. We send this statement to the client monthly so that they can see what was charged. Again, we don't mark that up, see what was charged, but we've taken that money from a retainer that we're holding.
Okay. That's good.
The end. So we'll take depends on the size of the project. Say we've taken $10,000. So then we'll just show them, okay, here's what's left of your retainer. So we eat away at that essentially, for lack of a better term, until the end, because I don't want to chase clients for money. Have you ever been in a situation where you've done where the client has, dragging their feet, they haven't paid for the load in, they haven't paid for that, and you're either stuck trying to figure out, do I deliver or not, or are you out of pocket? Has that happened to you?
No, thank goodness.
That's lucky, because I have had that situation, and then you're chasing them for money, and I'm not going to hold off paying my suppliers. It's just different ways to do it. I think that's really interesting. I like that you say in your contract and you let people know. It's so interesting that you do this, because I did this once and I stopped doing this. You say 5 to 8% of the total furniture budget, more or less, will be reflective of your moving costs, which I think is really wonderful that you tell clients. There was a time when I said 3 to 5% was the total, and then actually ended up being more. And I got dinged by the client. They're like, your contract says 3 to 5%. How could you not have any idea that it was going to be closer to 8% and blah, blah, blah. So I just took that wording right out of my contract, full stop. So I think that's great to hear that you've done that. Maybe it might be something I could consider doing, but maybe just upping the percentage.
Or don't include a percentage. If you're someone, or Rebecca, for you, if you don't want to have a number in there, or if you're someone that's not comfortable, maybe you don't have the experience yet, but maybe you've done one and you're not exactly sure how much they're all going to cost. Don't put a number in there at all. So if you're, you can say expect expect to have these moving costs, number will differ depending on your scope or depending on the delivery list. It could be approximately, and then you could give a huge buffer. You can do I would say never go less than 5% because it's never going to happen. If you really wanted to, you can say 10, although it's not going to be 10, but it's always nice to just do a big bracket. And then it's going to fall somewhere in there. I don't even know exactly. And they don't even know exactly, right? It's day of could change 100 different ways. So I don't think there's an exact science to figuring this one out.
Yeah. And I mean, another way to do it would be to use that percentage to calculate if you do have an incidentals retainer. Maybe you collect 7% of the furniture budget, and that's the incident. I'm a big fan of collecting the money up front. Mm-hmm. I would rather return money to the client at the end than be in this sticky situation where all the trades are booked, delivery scheduled, and we can't get a hold of the client because they're on vacation, they haven't paid it. What do we do? That causes me anxiety. But back to the conversation about contract.
Yes.
Because this has been such a good conversation, and I know that our time is coming to an end, and I want to make sure that the designers who are listening are not afraid of it, because it sounds kind of like big, bad, and scary. It sounds like, oh my God, this big, scary thing that I need to hire a lawyer to do. What would you say to a designer that maybe is, earlier on in the career, maybe, 2 years into it, they're starting to get bigger jobs. They feel like their contract is okay, but they want to know, what are the key areas that you think are the non-negotiables that need to be super clear? Obviously, you want everything to be done and super clear, but in your experience, would it be terminology around warranties and custom pieces? Or what would be those areas that you think are the first areas that someone should really tackle to protect themselves? Understanding you're not a lawyer, just based on your experience.
I would say personally, so if I can just go back for 1 second. So this whole notion of hiring a lawyer could be really big and bad. Not all of them are going, it's one piece that you need them to do. It's an investment into your business. So if you are getting bigger jobs, maybe just include that, $2,000 fee that you're going to be paying to your lawyer, $4,000, whatever it is, however big your contract needs to be, just maybe somehow include it within your projects, because I do think it's not even worth taking big projects on unless you have an insurance policy to protect you. When I reference insurance policy, I'm talking about that contract, not actual insurance, which I think you do need anyways. But for me, what I would say is it depends on the type of projects that you take. It should be the most, I would say, kind of expensive part, because you are really that liability. You want to be able to not have it to, you don't want to be sued for something that is $100,000 or $200,000. If you're being sued for a $5,000 sofa, does it suck? Absolutely. But that's not the scary part of it. You want to know that you want to make sure that the liability protects you from not having any responsibility under trades. I think that that's super important, that they are third parties, that you can make potentially recommendations, but you don't take any responsibility and you are not liable for whatever, if there's a delay or if there is something that, you can make a recommendation and something can happen with a trade that somehow is going to fall on you. You want to protect yourself, that you actually are not going to have any association if that other trade does get sued, or if something happens, and things can happen all the time. I would say, that's probably where I would have the most emphasis on. If you are
trades and subcontractors,
and subcontractors.
Yeah.
And then, because again, that could potentially be we're talking about, that's maybe not even small claims court. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. You want to take yourself out of that equation and make sure that you're protected, knowing that what your contract is there for, and your contract does not include third parties. So again, trades, subtrades, builders, whomever.
Yeah, I think that's a really important one. And I think that's also one of the areas people get the most nervous about. That, oh, I'm working with these contractors. Like, what if something happens? Am I on the hook? And there's all these questions. And so I think having that verbiage inside your contract to show them that this contract does not cover them. They are subject to their own, they have their own insurance, they have their own contracts and all that. What about product?
Yes. So product is, I would say people shouldn't be, if you're going into business, I almost think that like that fear of anything has to be put on a back burner. And if it's something that you are fearful of, just face it every day and eventually you'll get comfortable with it. But what are things that can happen? So let's talk about sizing. Let's talk about dye lot imperfection. So if you show a client a sample, and then you're ordering something, and perhaps by the time you ordered it, the dye lot is different. You want to ensure that your contract is stating that there can be dye lot differences within a sample versus the finished product. Because if they hang on to that sample, and typically if there's a dye lot difference, we're not talking about you show the client a pink and they're getting a green sofa. Like it's just, slight differences. If you're dealing with products like a grass cloth or a silk, you want to be able to tell the clients that there will potentially be imperfections within these products. We do a lot of custom rugs. So that discussion of they might thread, they might pill. It's part of the natural wool, and it's not something that is a default or a defect, rather. It's part of its natural form. So explaining to your clients are great, but having those things in your contract is a great way to protect you. Things that are, if something comes wrong within sizing, usually that falls on your fabricator. You have to triple, quadruple check that your furniture specifications are correct. So we will do furniture specs, send them off to our fabricators, but we'll look at those specs to make sure that they are exactly what we intended. There is also nothing wrong with, if you're unsure, going back to site and checking to make sure that things will fit. There's never been a client that has been offended by someone calling and saying, hey, I just want to double check something. I'm 99% sure this is correct, but I don't want anything. I don't want any surprises at load-in. Do you mind if we pop in, or if I pop in myself? I just want to get one extra measurement. No one's ever said, absolutely not. You had one chance. You blew it. It's never happened.
Totally. It's a really good reminder. It's really, really, because I know I talk a lot about how we only go to the client's house on certain key milestones. But the reality is sometimes when we're like, I really want to get the drape. I want to do that check measure again, because remember there was that funny thing with the bulkhead. It's always worth the time to go to site with this trade or on your own, whatever it is, to verify and triple check, so that the installation can go smoothly and there are no hiccups on the other end. So I love that.
And they'll be appreciative of it, because they know that you're thinking of them, that you're being meticulous, that it's not just something that you're throwing together, but you are double and triple checking. You actually just said something that triggered a thought. You're talking about the installation. So on all of including our contract, but on all of our drawings, if we are not building something. So if we're creating, let's say, millwork, or if we're creating anything that's essentially custom, but that someone else is building, we have listed on our drawings and in our contract that whoever is doing the final build, the measurements and dimensions are their responsibility, that our drawings are meant for conceptual purpose. So if I create a millwork drawing and the millworker just it doesn't go in to do a site measure, and they build a kitchen off of my drawings, and the kitchen comes and we're missing a couple inches here and there, which I will tell you happens all the time because your floor plans are never exact.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall on me, it falls on them. I cannot be responsible for someone else's business and the way that they're constructing and fabricating.
And I will add, never work with a trade or supplier who refuses to go to site to do their own measure.
Never.
It is not worth it. They may be the cheapest. You'll end up paying more in the long run. Totally.
You will end up paying, not the client's going to be like,
yeah. That was your responsibility.
Yep.
All right. So our time has come to an end, and this has been such a healthy conversation. I agree. I feel like there's a part 2 to this. So you and I can powwow offline and figure out the makeup of that conversation. I know there's gonna be a lot of questions from this podcast. Before we sign off though, what is one last nugget of wisdom that you feel like either we talked about that you want to reemphasize, or something we didn't touch on that you think is important information to leave with our listeners today?
I think that again, most important, besides, and I've emphasized, and I'm not trying to sell any lawyer services. I just really do believe in that. I think that's the most important. But what I will say is, once that's all said and done, once you have a contract, once the contract has been signed, follow your own contract. Hold yourself accountable for everything that you expect your client to fulfill their part of the agreement. Make sure that you are doing the same. Read your contract if you forgot, because that happens. You create a contract.
I do that all the time. I'm like, what does it say in our contract? Can we just verify that?
Read it. Every time you send one off, just read it over again. And there's nothing wrong with it. You're investing in your own business by doing so. You're putting in the time, and you're making sure that everything that you've said to them doesn't just stay on a piece of paper, but it actually happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that advice. Erica, I'm so glad that you approached me about having this conversation. I will say it again, but I am so grateful to you for sharing your direct experience with this. I think it speaks volumes to your tenacity, just to see what the obstacles that you've faced throughout your business and how you still continue to grow it and shine. And where can everybody who's listening follow you and learn all things Erica Gelman Design?
Definitely come and follow us on Instagram. It's Erica_Gelman. And please shoot me a DM. I love connecting, especially with new designers who have questions. I will love to answer them, because I want to be that person that I never had. So if you think you're making mistakes, I've made them 10 times worse.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, lady.
Thank you.
All right. So wasn't that episode with Erica so good? She is such an open book, and I love that about her. I immediately knew that this was going to be an awesome episode for everyone, because I've had her on the podcast before. I've had great conversations with her, and she never disappoints by revealing insider information. I cannot believe her experience with that client suing her over a sofa. I mean, wow. It is phenomenal to see how she's come through the other side and her learnings and her takeaways. And I think her experience really prompted her to want to share that with all of you, with all of us, so that we can focus on making sure that our contracts protect us. And really, I love her wisdom when she talks about how that contract, it makes you feel professional. And I love that she includes literally like everything she does in that contract, so that the client knows exactly what they're getting into. If you guys like this episode, let me know. Definitely go give Erica a follow on Instagram. She's such a phenomenal designer, extremely talented. And I would love to hear specifically more about what was the thing you heard today that made you think, I need that in my contract? Share it inside our Designer Meetup Facebook group. Send me a note. I always love to hear from you guys. And as always, please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast or follow it. And I would love you to leave us a review. If you're enjoying the podcast, if you like these guests and the information that we share here, the more reviews we get, the more people that will see us and listen to us. And so that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I'll see you soon.